From the athletic side, Yusuf and what's this dude's name? I always forget. Trahan, right? Joe Trahan, our WFA lead anchor, here with us as well tonight. Fellas, here we go again. 3 straight losses for the Dallas Cowboys. They are 3-5. The schedule only gets tougher from here. Joe, where does this team go from here?
Listen, man, they need to go back to work. Let's see, 9 more penalties today. Too many pre-snap penalties. It shows a lack of focus, a lack of discipline. They give up 3 sacks to a team that only had 6 sacks in the previous 7 games. Issues there. Dak Prescott is hurt. We don't know for how long. But yeah, just go back to work and let's see if you can show a little more discipline. And listen, I know this roster isn't great, but they can be better than they're playing, and I would like to see that.
Sadia, Joe mentioned it. Dak Prescott hurt. CeeDee Lamb battling through an AC joint sprain reportedly all through the second half of this football game. They're banged up enough as it is on the defensive side of the ball. They can't afford for it to be the case on the offensive side, too. It just keeps getting worse for this team.
Yeah, and, you know, when you talk about the offense, it just seems like nothing comes easy. And you know, that was my takeaway from the touchdown that they scored with Dak Prescott at quarterback, not counting that last one that Cooper Rush scored. I mean, that touchdown, it took everything to go right. I mean, it was a jailbreak in Dak's face. It was a bobble in the end zone by Rico on his back, catching the ball. And I mean, it's just nothing is coming easy for this offense right now. And so you're right. They can't afford these injuries. And the guys that you mentioned, Dak and CD, those are their 2 focal points of the offense. So it's really discouraging the fact that not only are they 3-5 and everything looks difficult, but things look like they're going to get more difficult as we progress from here.
I'm glad you brought that up about getting more difficult, because it really felt like early in this game, going for it on 4th and 1 in the second quarter, when the game is still relatively in reach, you got 2.5 quarters left to play, and you're starting to go for it at that part in the game. That was kind of the first warning sign. And then every 4th down after that they went for it, it kind of felt like, well, we went for it earlier in the game, now we got to go for it here. And it never really felt like they were consistently picking great plays. Like the jet sweep to CeeDee Lamb didn't feel like the best play call in that scenario, even though that, you know, they finally found some running game at a certain point in the game. It looked like they burst off. Dak showed them some mobility. That helped open up the run game a little bit at that point. And I think the other thing was the first series for the Cowboys, especially where Dak was pushing the ball downfield and it was high up-tempo, really quick offense, that looked like last year's team, and then it vanished all of a sudden in 2 or 3 incomplete passes. So as usual, we're left kind of dissecting a game where there are elements that look like they can be good, and yet there's a desperation, there's unforced errors that kind of turn the tide. Mike, I'm curious, was there a point for you where that all of a sudden warning lights started flashing?
I mean, honestly, the cruel irony that finally we did see Dak Prescott run the football, and then he gets hurt. It's almost like Jerry foretold this earlier this week on the radio. Joe, it looked like you were about to get in there. What was your point?
Well, no, a couple things. You know, I did like the way they started the game, right? But the pressure kept coming back in Dak's face. And I wanted to point out something that Saad tweeted out because it's so perfect. On the touchdown to Rico Dowdle, he captured the moment when Dak is just fighting for his life to find some space, but there is one offensive lineman who absolutely has his man walled off in perfect form, and it's Tyler Smith. The other 4 guys, good luck, because that's what it's been, and that's how tough it's been. That should have been an easy touchdown catch for Rico Dowdle, but he made it harder because he made himself catch it twice, because it wasn't good enough the first time. And that feels like a microcosm of what we have seen from this team. And it is, listen, it's becoming hard to watch. I will say this, they kept fighting throughout this game, no matter what happened. So good on them. But if they wouldn't have played so bad from the beginning, they wouldn't have had to fight so hard at the end.
Yeah, you mentioned the offensive line and the struggles there. Tyler Smith, yes, on that one play. The concern for me is I think we might be seeing the beginning of the end for Zach Martin. We keep seeing moments where it's going in the wrong direction.
I will repeat what I said last week after headlines. The hole for the Cowboys just gets that much bigger as they try and climb even closer to a division race that is running away. Saad, we cut you off last time heading to break. You wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, to your point, you were asking where it felt like everything turned around. To me, I think it was that fake punt at the beginning of the third quarter when you really talk about where the game really took a turn. At that point, you're down 4. You're less than 2 minutes into the third quarter. I'm not saying the Cowboys were playing well, but they were in the game very much. And I think, you give Kirk Cousins that short field. All of a sudden, that 4-point deficit turns into a much bigger one. And I think that's where the game really turned for the Cowboys in a lot of ways. So that was disappointing, as was the fact that they weren't able to pick up 1 yard multiple times. You mentioned that 4th and 1 that CD had. It was 3rd and 1 before that. When you can't pick up 1 yard in 2 tries, things are not going well.
Zeke Elliott not making the trip, disciplinary issues there. I understand disciplinary issues are at the root of why he didn't make the trip. Kind of feels like the beginning of the process of turning the page at the running back position, and it also kind of feels like it's about time.
Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, listen, in terms of the running back position, I mean, Rico Dowdle, 12 carries, 75 yards, 6.3 per carry. I mean, that's the closest thing we've seen to a functional running game all season long. So, listen, man, we call this from the jump. When they signed Zeke in the offseason, here's what I said. Zeke has been a warrior for this franchise. I would not, want to talk bad about Zeke, but Father Time is undefeated, and we're seeing the vestiges of that when we look at Zeke Elliott try and play football right now. He was tough on his body on the field. I don't know how nice he was to his body off the field either. So listen, man, if they have to move on, they have to move on. I suspect, though, because Jerry has a ton of affinity for Zeke Elliott, they will try and calm the waters, mend those fences. I think it might be on Zeke to try and decide that he wants to take the role that they have, and if he does, I think he can ride this thing out. If not, it could get interesting.
So another key point in this football game was the second touchdown for Atlanta to go up 14-3 in this game, and I need to be artful in how I say this, but Trayvon Diggs was at minimum a part of and potentially responsible for a bust in coverage that led to the Darnell Mooney touchdown reception that really kind of not blew this game open, but certainly put Dallas in a 2-score hole and put them in trouble in this football game. And frankly, he did look lost on the play, trying to figure out which one of the wide receivers in the Atlanta stack was his man.
Trayvon, if you're watching this.
And by the way, real quick on that.
He's over there. Leave him alone. Saad, go ahead.
Just a quick point on that to further just how much trouble the Cowboys have been in. That 4th and 1 play that Mike's talking about came after the Cowboys called a timeout. Mm-hmm. So they regrouped and they got together, and that was the result of the play.
Yeah, that's rough. I mean, that one, and then the other 4th and 1 that they went for on the offensive side of the ball where it looked like they were ready to go, and all of a sudden, pre-snap penalty, 12 men in the huddle, which seems like a pretty basic thing, especially at that point in the game.
That one was bad. Turning
a 4th and 1 and a potential rally into a 4th and 6 and a punt. I think that was another one that was very indicative of where the Cowboys are as a whole right now.
They are still way too penalized a football team. It's not as bad as it's been maybe at points in years gone by, but it's still a problem, and it was a big problem today, and more than anything else, untimely. That's a huge point in the football game where they could have continued a march back into the game, potentially gone down and tied the football game, and instead they've got to punt it away.
So no Zeke for the foreseeable future. No Dak, question mark. Saad, what?
How long is the Cooper Rush time?
Where do they go from here where Cooper's a quarterback, sure, but does Trey Lance see playing time? Like, what does this team do here?
Yeah, I think, look, if you're trying to look for a glimmer of hope, obviously the Cooper Rush has gone 4-1 with Mike McCarthy in an extended period of time where Dak Prescott missed some time. But that was a whole different football team, whole different situation. I think it's just so hard to say because you talk about complementary football, and when the offense is down, you need the defense to pick them up. But the defense is down as well right now. And Deron Bland hasn't practiced in 2 weeks. Micah Parsons hasn't practiced all week. It's tough to say that either one of them is on the brink of returning. I wish I could tell you anything positive right now, Andrew, but I just can't come up with anything.
3-8 heading to Thanksgiving. That's the
Let's
reality staring them in the face.
We'll find out.